Good afternoon and welcome to today's Planning Committee. This is not a public meeting, but a meeting the public can attend. I'm Councillor Neil Wood, Chair of the Planning Committee. Before I commence, I'd like to outline the domestic arrangements for the meeting. We're not expecting a fire practice today. If the alarm sounds, please leave the building by way of the fire exit through the doors at the left and the rear of the chamber on my right. When you have left the chamber, proceed down the stairway and exit through the emergency exit on the ground floor. If there's anybody with mobility issues, please wait in the refuge area at the top of the stairs where the emergency evacuation lift is located and use the intercom situated to the left-hand side of the lift doors to call for assistance. The designated assembly point is in the public square in front of CAS beyond the fountain. I'd like to inform members of the public and press that today's meeting will be audio-visually recorded. By entering the council chamber, you accept that you'll be recorded and your image is retained and broadcast by the council on its website on YouTube. If anyone intends to record or film any part of today's meeting, please ensure this does not disturb the conduct of the meeting and you only focus on recording those people participating. Please ensure that your mobile phones are switched to silent. May I remind anyone who's speaking in the meeting that you will need to press the large red button underneath the microphone and ensure the red light is illuminated. This will ensure you are recorded. The meeting is proceeding today on the basis that all members of the committee have read their agenda papers thoroughly and aware of what they will be considering today. If any members of the committee leave the chamber during consideration of application, they should ensure they do not take part in the vote on their return, as they will not have heard all the relevant information on that particular item. Thank you. So, item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. I've received apologies for Councillor Craig Ward, Vicky Lawson, Steve Plater. Are there any other apologies? No. Item 2, exclusion of the public and press. There are no exempt items on today's agenda. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Does anyone wish to declare an interest in an item on business on today's agenda, please? Steve?
Finley Ward member.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please declare it now and complete a declaration form and hand it to the governance officer following the meeting. Item 4. Minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on 21st of October 2025. Can the minutes be moved as a true and accurate record? Moved by Bob. Anyone second that? Chris? Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 5, schedule of applications. Members will have noted that applications 1 and 2 on the agenda today relate to the same application site, albeit the applications are different. Before we consider each of these in turn, I'm going to ask Stacey Cutler, Principal Legal Officer, to say a few words about how we need to approach the decision making on each of these, just so members can be completely clear in their own minds and for the benefits of any members of public to assist their understanding. Stacey.
Thank you, Chair. I did give this advice last time, members, but I'm just going to read it out again for just to assist members again this time round. So the 2 applications before you today are deferred from the October meeting, and they are for housing at the same application site. Item 1 is for up to 1,200 dwellings, and as set out in the report is fully policy compliant. Item 2 is for up to 1,400 dwellings on the same site and is policy compliant, save for a deviation in respect of Policy 6 of the local plan, which contains a mechanism to link the delivery of housing to the number of jobs created within the airport policy area. As your report set out in detail, the landscape has changed since Policy 6 was formulated and the local plan was adopted, and the planning officer considers that there are other material considerations which outweigh the technical non-compliance of Policy 6 in relation to Item 2. Section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 requires decisions to be made in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Decision makers must therefore assess an application against the development plan policies and weigh any other material considerations in the balance. In terms of your approach to determination of these applications, you are being asked to determine 2 separate and slightly different applications in respect of the same site, and each must be considered on its own merits. These are not competing proposals in the sense that they are alternatives, Both are recommended for approval, but clearly only one of the schemes can ultimately be developed, should members be minded to grant the applications. It is not an exercise in deciding which scheme you might prefer to come forward. Both are recommended for approval, and it is permissible, therefore, for members to resolve to either 1. Grant both applications in accordance with the officer's recommendations, or 2. Refuse both applications, subject to robust and defensible planning reasons, noting that decisions which are contrary to officer recommendation must clearly outline the material planning considerations relied upon in reaching such a decision, or 3. Grant one and refuse one of the applications. The applications will be presented in the order they were validated and considered in turn. I hope that guidance is of assistance to members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stacey. So, application number 1, 25/00136/OUTA. Outline plan application with environmental assessment for residential development, provision of co-working hubs with land allocated for a single form entry primary school, including the demolition of Warren House Farm and the provision of drainage, public open space with children's play space, enhancements to existing footpaths, tracks, new footpaths and cycleways at land south of Hurst Lane, Oakley, Doncaster. Mark Sewell, the planning case officer, will introduce this item. Mark.
Thank you, Chair. So as Stacey outlined, the application was deferred from the last meeting. So I'll just kind of go over the proposal again for the benefit of members who weren't at the previous meeting. So as discussed, the application is for outline consent for new residential development along with associated development, and it's for up to 1,200 dwellings. So if I just go through just to set some context and site location, just got some site photos here, I'll just skip over those. Okay, that's quite helpful. So we've got the local plan allocations map here. The planning application boundary is the same as the darker shaded bits of land there that you can see, and the application site's located to the southwest of the existing airport. The application's for up to 1,200 units, and the dwellings are proposed to be located within those pieces of land known as DSA 02 and DSA 03 that you can see on the allocations map there. In terms of the wider airport policy area, immediately to the north of this housing allocation is DSA 01, which is allocated for commercial uses and community uses to act as a new town centre to support the wider development. It's also known as the Plaza development, and this has outline planning permission already. Located to the east of the housing site, in blue you can see EMP05. That's allocated for employment uses, manufacturing, storage and distribution, that kind of thing. Again, that also has outline planning permission as per the local plan allocation. DSA 04 is allocated for air-related employment uses. That does not currently have outline planning, any kind of planning permission, but again allocated for those uses in local plan. Further employment land located to the north there, central on the plan, is further employment uses rather. They have been granted outline permission and have predominantly been built out now. So the application is in outline form, all matters reserved excepting for means of access. Proposed access points are shown from Hurst Lane to the north of the application site, a new roundabout junction shown on the junction of Hurst Lane and Great North Road on the western side of the plan there, and then a third access point towards the southern end, and that's on the junction of High Common Lane and Hurst Lane. Although the application is in outline form, the applicants have provided an illustrative master plan, which you can see on the site there, and that's on the slide there rather. That sets out how the development could be brought forward, and it shows a range of different character areas across the site, areas of green open space, and it's also important to note as well the wooded areas that you can see are excluded from the application site boundary. So they're being retained as they are. The illustrative master plan has been born from a fairly detailed, well, a very detailed design and access statement that the applicants provided, which goes into high level of detail, which shows how the different character areas could come forward, and that's informed by an assessment of local character and vernacular, and shows different kinds of street types, public open spaces to be provided around the development site, and so our urban design team have not raised any concerns with the level of detail and are quite happy that development could be brought forward in a way which could comply with the council's design policies. Just to provide a bit more meat on the bones of the illustrative master plan, the applicants have also provided a series of parameters plans which would be conditioned, and these kind of set out some kind of non-negotiables which any detailed reserve matters applications would have to adhere to. So one of the most important ones is the active travel parameters plan. That sets out a series of routes for pedestrians and cyclists and active travel routes across the site to show how the new housing can be linked up to the employment land to the east, to the plaza to the north, and to the existing settlement further to the north as well. The main active travel corridor is actually along the eastern boundary of the site rather than centrally, and that's really just to provide that ease of access to the large amount of employment floor space to the eastern side, so people working on that side can move between the two sites with ease. So there's been no objections on urban design grounds. As I said, the only matter to be considered formally is means of access. With no objections from the Highways Development Management to the proposals. The team have been consulted and looked at the proposed access arrangements, and they've raised no objections on those grounds. Obviously, members wanted further information on highways issues, and so we've got members from the Highways team will just provide a further update after I finish, just to go over some of those further points that were raised. Just in terms of kind of wider highways issues, in terms of traffic generation and impact on the wider local road network, the applicant provided a transport assessment with the application, and no objections were received either from the council's transportation team or indeed National Highways, who looked at the impacts of the proposal on junction 3 of the M18. There are proposed to be off-site mitigation works to a couple of the junctions around the site, which don't require to be brought into play until around 600 dwellings are constructed on the site. So that's, again, the traffic flows that have been modelled have been deemed to be acceptable and won't cause an impact on the wider highway network. In terms of junction 3 itself, it's recognised that there is an issue with the traffic on that junction. National Highways haven't raised an objection on the basis that there will be a scheme of improvement works to come forward at junction 3 in the future, and as part of the section 106 attached to this application, the applicants will be providing a contribution to ensure that those works come forward at the appropriate time, and so that they can be in place to meet that higher demand of traffic, not just from this development but from all the local plan allocations coming forward. South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority have also commented on the application in their role of being responsible for public transport. The application site layout does accommodate a bus route within the site. That's welcomed, and they've requested financial contributions to improvement to existing bus stops, as well as to providing extension to existing bus services within the site, and those contributions are included within the Section 106 agreement. I'll just go back to the green infrastructure plan. Along with the existing trees and hedgerows on the site, as I said, kind of the woodland areas are shown to be retained within as part of the development. They're excluded from the red line boundary. It's also the intention to retain all the existing hedgerows within the site along the field boundaries, except for where access points need to be made. Alongside that, it's also intended to retain all the existing drainage ditches that are across the site. Applicants provided a drainage and flood risk assessment with the application. The site's within flood zone 1, so it's at low flood risk. the submitted drainage strategy sets out the approach for both foul and surface water disposal across the site, and the surface water strategy has been assessed on a worst case scenario, assuming that the majority water attenuation would be accommodated in detention basins. No objections have been received from our drainage team in principle to the proposals, and they've recommended a condition to ensure that the detailed drainage design is agreed as part of any future reserve matters applications coming forward. In terms of the foul water disposal, again, no objection from the statutory provider, Severn Trent, and the strategy there is to utilise an existing on-site pumping station, which is then pumped northwards to the nearest connection to the north of the site. Again, no objections received from Severn Trent. As I say, the majority of trees and hedgerows are sought to be retained on the site. Detailed tree assessment has been provided with the application. No objections have been received from the tree officer. Application's also been accompanied by a suite of ecological surveys, and they've been assessed and agreed by the council's ecologist. There will be the inevitable loss of some on-site habitats, but that's accepted for a development on this scale. It's noted the majority of the development is within arable fields, and so that's normally kind of a lower interest in terms of ecological habitats. Trees, the majority of hedgerows and woodland areas, as I say, are sought to be retained, and so that retention has kind of minimised the loss of habitats. The applicants have also provided a BNG assessment, and the scheme will be subject to the mandatory 10% net gain requirement. And the proposals do show that required mitigation looks like it can be accommodated wholly on site, but conditions are recommended to ensure that those details are agreed as part of the detailed proposals coming forward. No objections on noise grounds. Conditions recommended to protect properties from noise along the site's eastern boundary with Great North Road. Members did query the impact on properties when the airport is operational. The submitted noise assessment environmental impact assessment has assessed the proposal against the noise contours associated with a fully operational airport, and have also assessed the flight movement at its maximum when the airport was operational. I think, just as an example, the housing to the north of this site at Pembridge Park, similarly, there was no air noise impacts on that proposal. The noise contours kind of sit to the ends of the runway, so the existing housing is kind of outside of the noise contours. Just to put it in a bit of more wider context as well, as you'll be aware, kind of wider Gateway East site is seen as a kind of regional priority. It's included within the South Yorkshire growth plan, and is one of 4 growth areas. Within that growth area, it highlights kind of EMP05 and DSA04 as kind of significant employment generators, looking to perhaps generate up to 5,000 jobs in the area. It's also included within the South Yorkshire investment zone. So this housing application forms kind of the last piece of the jigsaw in terms of the Gateway East Airport policy area. The employment land has either been granted outline planning permission or has already been built out. The new town centre use at the plaza has also granted outline planning permission, with reserve matters expected to be coming in shortly. And this is, as I say, the final piece of the jigsaw. The policy does require, policy 6 does require that the first 280 houses on the site can be delivered, and then the further additional housing on DSA03 is predicated on job delivery within the airport policy area. And this application 1 proposes exactly that route with those controls contained within the legal agreement. So on that basis, the application is recommended for approval. I'll just kind of go over to colleagues in education and highways just to pick up on some of the additional points that members were concerned about on the first application.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Chair. In terms of the previous discussions that we had around the plan application, we provided additional information in the pack, so I won't go through that in any detail, so just to bring out some of the main points that we've gone over before. In terms of our preferred option, expanding existing schools is the most affordable and effective way to provide high quality education in the area. For example, a new primary school and secondary expansion, because both would be required, would need in the region of 16 to 17 million pounds, whereas expanding the existing schools would be more in the region of 6 to 8 million pounds, which is more in line with the funding available through the 106 agreement. In terms of funding for schools, it's noteworthy that mainstream school funding is pupil-led. 93% approximately of pupil funding is for the schools. And that means that existing schools would benefit from economies of scale and can support children with diverse needs. That compares to a new school which would have to start from a low benchmark with small cohorts, essentially mixed-age teaching, which would limit support and resources available to the existing children. In terms of local context then, the schools that we're looking at, the local schools are rated at good Ofsted and are highly sought after, and we expect families moving into the Hurstwood estate and therefore expect those to seek places at these schools. In terms of the 106 agreement then, this provides the maximum amount of funding and now includes, through negotiations from the last meeting, land for future primary school if needed. In terms of secondary school expansion, this would still be required in any case and would be required to meet demand. There are a number of benefits to the 3-school option, which is one of the options there. There'd be seamless transitions between stages, a strong community and mentoring opportunities, and access to specialist facilities for younger pupils that they wouldn't have at the primary schools. And it would also provide convenience for local families and a shared support system, including shared transport. Finally, a couple of other points: infrastructure and traffic. Road impact mitigations would be implemented as part of any solution, and local pupils will be prioritised, which would reduce outer catchment area traffic that we currently have, and that would reduce over time. Some reassurance about build quality. We recently visited latest expansion at Hatchwood Primary School, which is a one-form expansion. Just to say, our expansion would be match current new build standards and include remedial upgrades. Walking around the current expansion that we've done recently, you would think you'd be walking around a new school. And then finally, just in terms of our summary, so it's our view that expanding the current provision is the most affordable option and will provide pupils with good, high-quality education in the local area. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. In terms of the main highway questions from the previous meeting, members asked about the speed limit of the existing road and why it was still 60 miles an hour, and expressed an opinion that it was unsafe. I've got Sam Whitehurst from my Safer Roads team here to answer any questions relating to what his team does in terms of continually assessing speed limits over the whole of the city's strategic network and how they are assessed and dealt with. So I would ask any questions be sent to Sam to answer on why speed limits are what they are. Certain members asked about road collision data for this road, which has been collated, and if members wish, we do have the information at hand if they want more detail about those collisions. Apparently there was a meeting last week which I didn't attend where a number of these points were raised and answered. So I would refer to those deliberations within that meeting as well as additional information. The roundabouts, junctions were also questioned in terms of why we design junction roundabouts to the speed limit of the road. Well, that's how we design in highways, to the speed limit, not to a perceived reduction in the speed limit, and they are all designed safely as well as to the design standards within the DMRB, which are the recognised design standards for highway design on routes, classified road routes of this high speed nature. As part of the process of the design, detail will then come through the section 278 process to further assess the safety of these junctions, which will be undertaken through a road safety audit, which there are 3 parts, 3 stages to that audit, with the final stage 3 assessing how the proposed junctions, roundabouts operate after they've been built. So again, it's a catch-all. If you have any details on the design of these roundabouts, then the applicant is here because they are responsible for the design, not me. So, and they are undertake the designer duties under the CDM regulations. So they are available for comment on this. Impacts of the traffic generated from the site, as said by Mark, will be continually assessed at junctions that have been agreed as part of the transport assessment, and any mitigation measures that are needed to be undertaken to alleviate any problems at the junctions will be done as part of that ongoing assessment. I think that's most of the things that was covered within the previous meeting. However, any detailed questions relating to design in particular, I would ask members to put it to the applicant because they are responsible for the detail. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Just one more point as well. I think members just wanted some clarification on the information that's provided as part of the environmental impact assessment, so that we can fully assess the impacts of the proposal when operational. So just to kind of outline to members how the environmental statement environmental impact assessment process works. As part of the submitted surveys and information that's submitted, the applicants establish a baseline, and I normally use transport as a kind of an easy concept to grasp. So the modelling and recording has gone on to identify what the existing traffic flows are on the local road network, and kind of the scope of the affected roads is agreed with the council's transportation team. So that exercise is undertaken so we can understand what vehicle flows are. Added on to that is all committed development, and that includes application sites which are allocated to come forward within the local plan, or sites which have planning permission but not yet been implemented. Those sites will normally be included with their own transport assessment, showing what vehicle flows will be at a worst case scenario. In the case of this site as well, as part of the committed development, the operational airport traffic flows have also been included within it. So we've got the existing traffic flows as currently, the committed development showing stuff that's got planning permission and not been implemented or is allocated, and included within that the operational airport at its capacity. It's only then that the applicants put in the traffic generated as a result of this development, again on a worst case scenario on top of that, and then that overall traffic flow is assessed within the transport assessment, which has been assessed by colleagues in transport and at National Highway. So that kind of just sets the scene as to the level of information that's provided within the environmental impact assessment. Similarly, the noise assessment has been carried out on that basis. Obviously, noise assessment, some of the information there is derived from traffic flows, obviously, and also on the basis of a fully operational airport. So that's just to set members, just to provide members with a bit of context as to how these assessments take place, and on what basis that consultees and colleagues are commenting on the information that's been provided. So I think that concludes things. Obviously, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions shown and the Section 106 agreement, the heads of terms of which are included within the papers, which include affordable housing, transportation contributions, BNG monitoring, and bus service, and bus stop improvements, and education contribution obviously as well. So on that basis, the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you, officers. We've received requests to speak from Mr Gareth Finch, the applicant, from David Diggle and Mike Hibbert in support of the application. This is now your opportunity to address the committee collectively for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Gareth Finch from Peel. And
I was just
Mike,
looking for you. I couldn't find you. Right, so you've got 5 minutes. Please press the large red button when you want to speak and then press it again to mute your microphone when you've concluded your submission. Would you like to commence?
Thank you, Chair and Officers. It'll be myself and from Peel and Gareth Finch and Mike Hibbert, our Transport Consultant to my right, speaking. As you've heard, the application site is the final piece of a strategic jigsaw, bringing together employment, residential, town centre uses across several local plan allocations, all as set out in Appendix 1 of the Officer's report. These allocations in the Airport Policy Area, or APA as I'll refer to it, within which they sit, were all defined in the Local Plan Policy 6. The APA is also now known as South Yorkshire Airport City or Gateway East, both and are being jointly promoted with the Council. The shared objective is to create a sustainable, inclusive, mixed-use community where people can live, work, shop, access leisure and community uses, a comprehensively planned and genuinely sustainable development. The local plan process was rigorous. Public consultations in 2015, 18 and 19, examination by an inspector and adoption in 2021. The overall proposals for the APA were shaped by a master plan first developed in 2017, consulted on in spring 2018. This generated over 1,600 responses, half from local residents, with over 90% supporting the mixed-use vision. There was no significant opposition to the allocations during the local plan consultations, whilst the current application, including at pre-application stage, has generated little by way of objections. A core principle of the master plan for the wider APA is a comprehensive active travel route as described by Mr. Sewell, and that's aimed to integrate and connect all elements of the master plan on foot and by cycle, encouraging movement by those modes without the need to rely on a car. The employment and town centre allocations already have permission, with substantial areas of employment space already delivered close to the airport car parks. This application now seeks permission for the final component. We've worked closely with officers to design a cohesive and inclusive policy-compliant residential community with significant open space, woodland access routes, and comprehensive segregated active travel connections to the adjacent employment areas and town centre, with contributions to secure additional school places. The scheme also includes retention and extensive woodland and hedgerows, with well in excess of 10% BNG. Also, it includes retention of the existing agricultural ditch network for surface and groundwater drainage, with measures to ensure the runoff rate into that network is no greater than existing. In response to a question last month, we have provided a detailed note intended to assist members, and education officers also provide a detailed note on school places. Both notes confirm that we have agreed, in addition to the required school place contributions, that the Section 106 would also, for up to 12 years, safeguard the land identified within the site for a potential primary school. During that time, should the need arise from future residential developments, the council will be able to acquire the site for provision of additional primary school. We've also agreed to an additional planning condition requiring the construction of a zebra crossing of Great Yorkshire Way to assist in making the walking route to Hayfield School safer. In response to questions around the reopening of the airport and its taking account within the assessments, Section 3 of the note sets out the methodology of how the TA has built in the actual level of traffic known to have been generated by the airport during its busiest ever year at 1.4 million passengers. That was an average of 4,000 vehicles per day accounted for. This data was then fed into all relevant technical assessments, including in respect of air quality and pollution. Also, the note also confirms that the noise assessment is based not on the airport at its busiest time, but on an airport operating at future levels 4 times as great as it ever did do. And we are still well clear of those noise contours, even at 4 times greater air traffic. As Mr. Stewell said, the residential scheme on the north side of Great Yorkshire Way, Pembridge Park, was planned in a very similar way against an operational airport backdrop and has presented no problems whatsoever. Our transport consultant, Mr. Hibbert, will talk briefly about the safety of access arrangements, and I will hand over to him now.
Sorry, Joe, was that 30 seconds? I'll be as quick as I can. Mike Hibbert, TTAT, Transport Consultant. Quick overview of the safety aspects. With regard to the proposed access junction roundabouts on Great North Road, these have been designed to nationally recognised design standards, fully compliant with all safety requirements. Following approval, as you've heard from Mr Wiltshire, they'll be subject to further safety checks and a 3-stage safety audit process. All designs comply with existing de-restricted...
I'll see your time's up, pal. Thank you. You got more questions? I will now ask the committee members if they wish to ask any questions in relation to the submission. Councillor Dennis, Rob.
Thank you. Mark, I'll do you a favour. And one of my questions was going to be about the roundabouts. It's a bit of a daft laddie question, but I'll allow you to expand as well. The two proposed roundabouts, one significantly larger than the other. Can you explain that as well as the other safety features planned as part of the roundabouts?
Yes, thanks for that, and apologies that I only got 30 seconds, but I even forgot to turn my mic on. Yeah, there's a difference in the scale of the roundabouts, largely because the one with High Common Lane is designed to accommodate the 3 existing arms and then the 4th arm into the development. It's also related in part to the IQ development, the big employment site, and the way the HGVs track through the roundabout. So you do end up with a bigger and bigger footprint as you accommodate those vehicles. It's slightly easier at the Hurst Lane junction, given the alignments, but the alignments with High Common Lane at that acute angle mean that the footprint just gets bigger. Thank you.
Councillor Cox, Steve.
Thank you. Gareth, 12 years for the land. When would that start from?
That would start, Councillor Cox, from commencement of development on the residential site.
How soon from granting would you assume that would start developing?
It would be after the process of subsequent reserve matters submissions and approvals and discharges of conditions applicable to both the outline permission and any reserve matters conditions. So 12 to 18 months start on site.
How many years would you expect building to be on site?
Approaching 15 years.
Councillor, could you, Chris?
Yes, regarding the land reserved for the school, while I can understand a 12-year limit can be seen by your good selves as money in the bank, land goes up in value. I did ask the question to officers a couple of days ago, don't know if they put it through you, could not this land be reserved in perpetuity for the length of the site, as I'm sure as the site develops into a viable area, there will be occasions where they may need a new school, or it may be nice to have something for preschool children or youth organisations. And I think it would be a lovely commitment from your good selves if this land could be reserved in perpetuity in case those needs arose. What would your comments be on that, please?
Thank you, Councillor Kidger. The question was put to us at the time. The commitment that we'd set down in the heads of terms for the 106 was a 10-year period. So we chatted through internally requests for in perpetuity, and our view would be that it wouldn't be a great prospect for the community to have a piece of land sat fallow with potentially no real use for ever and more. There are a number of provisions both within this scheme and even more so within the Plaza scheme to the north for any number of community type uses. The school expansions or the school expansion that is being talked about does, I'm sure, deal with the entirety of preschool as well as during school and after school provisions and requirements. So in short, I mean, I'll invite my colleague Julian Stott behind me to sort of add anything to that, but we're really not convinced it's in anybody's interests for such a piece of land to lay fallow, undeveloped, with no use for evermore. And, you know, we feel that 12 years does give, as opposed to the original 10, or the 8 that was discussed prior to that, does give a more than reasonable time frame, which actually exceeds the period of the next local plan, for example. That's how long we're talking, you know, by which point in time we should all know what the future housing requirements are for the entire city, let alone this area, and we'll know whether or not that land will be needed without having to hang on to it forevermore. Don't know whether Mr. Stott's got anything to add to that.
No, I think you've summed that up perfectly.
Yeah, okay. I think you're undervaluing, you know, any amount of open green space for the community. And is this particular development, in some ways, is very much like a new small town. I think the demand, certainly for preschool places and youth groups, would be a popular demand, and maybe more than what you are suggesting. That would be my only comment.
Just to pick up on that, as Mr. Finch said, the kind of 12-year period does allow for the kind of entirety of kind of the local plan period, and obviously education demand is constantly being assessed, and obviously housing allocations will be coming forward, and we'll know what the housing requirement is. So in terms of additional school places in this area, education team would not just be relying or looking at a piece of land on this site, they would be looking in kind of the wider area to accommodate that. Beyond that, in terms of meeting the tests for applying planning conditions or obligations, having something in perpetuity or without an end date, it wouldn't seem to be reasonable. So we would probably have to, in planning terms, so if we did insist on that, and it could quite easily be challenged in legal terms if the developers wanted to appeal us putting no end date on that. But I think 12 years is kind of more than adequate time in which this land could either be utilised within that period. It could be said, well, you know, the demand is there, or indeed enough time will go by where other pieces of land in the area will be identified. And on top of that, in terms of preschool provision, that kind of thing, there are community uses shown in the plaza as well, which could accommodate some of those kind of preschool uses too.
Yeah, Roy.
Just to build on what Mark said, my advice, members, would go probably a bit stronger than what Mark said there. To ask for something to be retained in perpetuity would fail the legal tests of a Section 106 agreement. It would be unreasonable to request that, and also just for the benefit from my experience as well, and building on what Mr. Finch and his team has mentioned, the 12 years, which is news to me. So it has moved forwards. It was previously 8, we discussed 10, and now it's gone to 12. Has gone some way towards addressing the members' concerns on that regard. I would hope you would see that, but that plays absolutely into we will have much more clarity in terms of the future direction of the local plan, the housing requirements that will be required, the planning of where that housing needs to go, and that will actually then lead us to making a decision as to whether this land is something that should be then called upon for a school or not, and all those timescales fit into the local plan process. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. I think it was mentioned earlier on around trigger points, and trigger point 1 was it 600 homes when highways infrastructure needs to be developed out? Is that correct? I mean, so it'd be reasonable to make an assumption at that point there's going to be a good number of people living on site, so the 12-year starting point for this land to that when that starts from, wouldn't it be good to link the two together also then? So at that trigger point of 600 homes is when that 12 years would commence from. I mean, if that's something which we can put in as a planning condition, I'd be willing to propose that. Chair, thank you.
Emma?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to be absolutely clear. The financial contribution that we're seeking for education for the extension of the schools that you've heard and that are in your papers, that is the mitigation for this development that you're considering today. The safeguarded land for the 12-year period is in addition to the policy requirement. So we couldn't be asking for any more than really what's been put forward in terms of the 12 years from the point of commencement, because that is all over and above what the policy requirement is and what the evidence is around the financial contribution. So the safeguarded land is completely extra to anything that the policy is requiring. I just wanted to make that absolutely clear.
Yeah, my reason for stating that, Chair, is just because it shows good faith and goodwill from both sides, then, doesn't it? That's all.
Thank you. I mean, I'll agree with what's been said. Is basically what is being put forward is, hypothetically speaking, this might happen for another 30 years. So we want 12 years after 30 years. So when you literally put the spade in the ground, is I think what the members are saying is we need to make sure that the 12-year is the right count, not we've put a spade in ground and then not built any houses for 3 years. That's 3 years a year, 12 years already gone. Is that a fair assumption? Would anybody else count?
So, Chair, that's why I'm talking about that trigger point and linking the two, because the trigger point is a significant point along the development. So then to coincide it all together, again, maybe I'm wrong on this, Chair.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with what you're saying. I'm just making it clear that I think what we're after is a definitive time when 12 years is going to count from and to, so that it's clear for everybody in the members who want to understand what we're actually defining as 12 years. Stacey, sorry.
Yeah, so I think what's been offered is 12 years from commencement of the development, and I understand why members take issue with that. But just to echo very strongly what Roy and Emma have said, is that the land is safeguarded in addition to what the policy requires the developer to provide. You are legally obliged to ensure that planning obligations meet the legal tests. Anything that's above policy requirement has to meet those tests. It has to be proportionate. Asking for something in perpetuity or for so many years hence really goes beyond what's reasonable here. And I think there's sufficient grounds for the developer to challenge that. So I would just caution against making such a recommendation.
Councillor Dennis.
Thanks, Chair. I do appreciate the advice that officers are providing us and understand the reason for that. However, from a member's perspective, in the last committee meeting, that land wasn't safeguarded whatsoever for any amount of years. Roy said the conversation started after 8 years. In the pre-briefing last week, we were told 10 years, and it's 10 years in this document. And now the developers now said 12 years, and now it's 12 years from a spade going in the ground. So I don't know if the developer or if it's the officer that can say definitively what that should be. I appreciate that even providing this guarantee for X amount of years is above what the policy should be. However, if we're at this point in the conversation, we need to know when that point is.
If I can answer clearly, Chair, it's an age-old way of defining a precise start time for whether it's in a planning condition or 106 obligation. You will see littered throughout that agenda prior to commencement of development or reference to other triggers, but we all understand ourselves, the planning officers, all the other consultees, that when something we know, and I'm sure officers can advise you, that when something says either it should be something should happen prior to commencement of development or a clock starts ticking upon commencement of development, that is a very well recognised and understood time frame for the clock to start ticking. And that's exactly what we are suggesting here. And, the legal officer will will give you further advice about the need for conditions and obligations to be precise. And that's exactly what we're trying to set down here.
Majid.
Thank you, Chair. And I've spoke a few times on this, so thank you, Chair. So again, for that exact reason why you've said, and you've put it out so well, that's why having a defined point from where it starts from, that's why I've mentioned the trigger point being, we've already referenced in one trigger point, which is 600 homes, and it's just a sign of goodwill from your point of view. It's not anything which we're trying to strong arm you into, but it's just a suggestion which would, I think it would reassure other panel members about your commitment to that land, because I think Councillor Kidger wanted it for forever and a day, as he said, and which is understandable. But having that trigger point at 600 homes to coincide alongside that other trigger point, it would be a good point as far as I'm concerned. But it's up to other panel members to agree or disagree with me.
Any more for the applicants? Councillor Dennis.
Mike, back to you on this one. It's probably just a yes or no answer, actually. The section of field off of Great North Road, is it that one? That isn't part of this application. There's your development either side of it. Is the internal road network laid out in such a way that if that plot of land was used for future housing development, it could be linked up?
In fairness, I don't think we've looked at that. Having said that, the network has been organised within the master plan so that it provides maximum connectivity. It may be that with some small adjustments internally, that a through arrangement could be pursued. Are you thinking? I'm trying to anticipate that another access then on Great North Road. Is that the reason for the question?
That actually wasn't where my question was getting at. It was more just sort of internal linkability of the site. But sensibly thinking, I'd assume there would be a link into that field if, at any future point, it did become a development.
Yeah, Gareth just reminded me, everything is illustrative, so it could be provided for. There's no reason, technically, why that couldn't be designed in that way.
Thank you.
That's all the questions, yeah. Right, I will ask committee members if they wish to ask any questions in relation to the submission from the officers. None at all. Emma, do you want to speak?
I would just encourage members, if they do have any questions, we've got a lot of people sat in the room prepared and ready to answer them, so do satisfy yourselves that if you have any questions that are still outstanding or that you have any concerns about, then please do ask.
So does any member wish... Sorry, Councillor Dennis.
I thought I'd come in and rescue it. For education colleagues, let me just get what I'm saying right. Within the additional note that was provided, there was reference to if a school was built on this patch of land, that the money allocated through the set formula wouldn't be enough to build a full school, and that the school, the funding would either have to come from another source like third party or through a free schools bid. It's my understanding that the current government is sort of reviewing that free school process and what other, or if education colleagues know if any other funding stream would replace that free schools system if we went down the line of building a new school.
I think it was as early as last week there was noises from the government about potential future streams. They're reviewing their whole structure in terms of the buildings that they already have and then future buildings. Just it was a note on last time's meeting that new provision in Doncaster is highly unusual. When we've looked back, we've had 5 new schools in the last 10 years, and they have all been through a bidding process to the DFE. So subject to those becoming available, we would certainly afford ourselves of those if they became available, but there's no guarantees yet.
Do the officers wish to clarify any matters of fact prior to members going to debate?
Thank you, Chair. The only point of fact that I would clarify following on from the applicant speaking is the point around the 12 versus the 10 years as set out. So the recommendation in your papers at page 21, paragraph 4.1 cites the 10 years. So the recommendation will be updated to the 12 years following that proposal. So it was just a matter of clarification there. Thank you.
Chair, thank you. Can I just get one of the planning officers to give me some clarification? So if we were to make a recommendation that 12 years was to start at the trigger point of 600, would that be subject to a legal challenge, or would it not be? Would we be able to defend that?
My advice is I think that the applicants would certainly be within their rights to challenge it. I think, as you've been told, the safeguarded land is provided as additionality to the policy requirement. You have to ensure that planning obligations sought comply with the tests. I think anything that goes beyond what they've already agreed is really pushing it too far. I'm not saying they will challenge it. I'm saying they might, and that risk is there. So it's up to members what they want to do with that advice, but that is my advice. I hope that's helpful.
So, committee members, we will now go into debate. Does any member wish to comment on the report or ask the planning case officer a question? Right. Is there a proposal to grant planning permission subject to the imposition of planning conditions in a Section 106 agreement? Is there a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Khan. Is there a seconder? Councillor Dennis. Right, I'll move to the vote. Please indicate by raising your hand. 4. Five. Against? 1. And abstain? 1. Yep, so I'll just confirm that the planning permission has been granted for the first case, application 25000136 OUTA. Right. We'll have a 5-minute break if everybody's okay with that. Welcome back, everybody. Application 2, 25/00137/0 OUTA. Outline environmental assessment, outline planning application for multi-tenure residential development, including affordable housing, later living, retirement accommodation, assistant living, build to rent and other complementary multi-tenure specialist housing, with one identified for a single form entry primary school, including a demolition of Warren House Farm and the provision of community buildings, sui generis uses comprising drinking establishments with expanded food provision, co-working hubs, drainage works, public open space with children's play areas, enhancement to existing footpaths, tracks, new footpaths and cycleways at land south of Hurst Lane, Oakley. Mark Searle, the planning case officer, will introduce his item. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. This is the second application on the same site, differing from the first in terms of the quantum of development, now applying for up to 1,400 units, also including some community use buildings, as you can see within the description there, as well as the main other difference is a deviation from policy 6 in terms of how housing on the land is brought forward. If I just go again to the allocations map, just to help things along. Trigger happy? There we go. To say that policy 6 sets out the quantum of housing on DSA 02 and 03, up to 1,200 units is what policy 6 requires. As I say, the initial tranche under DSA 02 allocates 280 dwellings, and then the balance of housing would come forward predicated on evidence job delivery across the airport policy area. So this application seeks to not comply with that element of the policy. What it instead seeks to do is bring forward up to 600 units initially across DSA02 and 03. No more than 600 units could be constructed before the enabling infrastructure into the adjacent employment policy area EMP05, the IQ site, is delivered, and that's in the form of delivering the estate road into the site. So that will be the trigger for unlocking the balance of the rest of the 800 units across the site. Obviously, this does depart from an element of the policy. On balance, as the paper set out, we think it's acceptable to go with this approach. Obviously, since the local plan policy was written, we're in a different situation now in terms of the airport, and also a lot of the employment land has already been delivered across the application site, as well as being granted outline planning permission. Coupled with that, there's obviously kind of the national need to deliver additional housing, and the priority that's been given. In terms of the actual development itself, the 1,400 units with the additional uses, and I'll just kind of come to the split of the tenure shortly, provides a better placemaking exercise in terms of the way the site's been master planned, and hopefully kind of provides more of those community benefits and uses that you would like to see within the airport policy area. So just in terms of the split of housing, I think Councillor Dennis at the end of the last meeting mentioned, I think on the original planning application 1, we're looking for 1,200 units, 23% of those would be affordable housing. What this application proposes in terms of your normal market affordable split would be 800 market housing with 239 affordable houses. That's 1,039. That 239 is your 23%. In addition to that, this proposal provides for 361 multi-tenure housing uses, alternative uses, which could include things like build to rent, extra care, housing for the elderly, things which could address a local community need. In terms of the affordable housing asks, some of those uses in themselves would normally require affordable housing element, and so the section 106, in addition to what's the 239, would require, where needed, where required, affordable housing elements to be brought forward on those 239 units. So it's on, keeping it fairly short, it's on that basis that we consider the proposal to be acceptable. In terms of delivery of infrastructure, it guarantees the delivery, or helps to deliver the enabling development of the employment policy area. Crucially as well, on the previous, on the way Policy 6 is worded at the moment, you can have your initial 280 houses. Further to that, any housing is predicated on delivery of jobs in the airport policy area. The difficulty that could provide in terms of things like the Section 106 financial contribution for schools, that once the initial money has been delivered under the 106, there would be an unknown period of time. You would be waiting for jobs to be created, houses to be built, till you met your next trigger for a financial contribution. This approach provides a bit more surety of delivery of houses on the site, so that education colleagues can plan the spend of that money in a more sure way. So that's one of the other benefits. So from a planning policy, from a planning point of view, rather, from an overall point of view, we consider, whilst the proposal provides for more housing than shown in the policy by a couple of hundred units, and also it doesn't comply with that jobs trigger, we consider in terms of placemaking, in terms of the situation as it is on the ground at the moment, and the need for delivering housing, we'd consider that there's no real harm caused by this approach, and indeed we think the benefits to it in terms of the additional community uses it provides and the surety of delivery of infrastructure means that we can support it. In terms of the other issues, things that we've talked about with colleagues before, education, highways, drainage, trees and hedgerows, that kind of thing. The environmental statement's been undertaken in exactly the same manner as it was for the previous application, and indeed most consultees came back with a uniform response to both applications in that there are the same impacts provided by the application. So there's no further concerns raised by consultees to those other matters outside of the principle of development. So it's on that basis it would recommend approval subject to section 106. Same heads of terms previously, albeit the financial contribution for education places is at a higher level, obviously, in terms of the additional housing that's to be provided on the site. So on that basis, we're recommending the application for approval.
Thank you, Mark. We've again received requests to speak from Mr Finch, Diggle and Hibbert in support of the application. This is now your opportunity to address the committee collectively for up to 5 minutes. Please press the large red button when you want to speak and press again to mute the microphone when you have concluded your submission. If you want your mate to speak, give him enough time. Would you like to commence?
It should be just me this time, but easier to answer questions. Thank you, Chair, again to officers. This is application, as Mr Sewell says, for an alternative scheme for the whole site, although it's identical in terms of the amount of green space, retained woodland hedgerows and the extent of built development within the development parcels. Differs in two ways. First, in terms of the number and type of dwellings, 1,400 units are proposed with the opportunity where need and demand is there for the market to deliver a wider range of accommodation and tenures, including, as Mr Sewell says, build to rent, retirement and sheltered, extra care, care and nursing homes, in addition to the more standard products. No policy issues arise from that. Second difference relates to the policy mechanism, or the jobs link as I'll refer to it, as Mr Sewell outlined. This specifies more than 280 dwellings will not be approved unless the number of jobs required by that mechanism have already been delivered at a ratio of 9 jobs per house. When devised in 2017 or thereabouts, the objective was clearly to ensure this site could not be developed or fully developed without the planned employment development and job creation. My first key point is that since the mechanism was devised, the partnership approach that we've taken to commercial employment development, as Mr Sewell outlined, has resulted in the amount of job creating floor space within the policy area increasing, and it's increased from 250,000 square feet in 2017 to over 1 million square feet as of now. On top of this, terms are now agreed for a further 70,000 square feet to be delivered in the next, or to start on site in the next few months. On allocation EMPO 5, as noted, we've invested substantially. Mr Sewell didn't mention this, but it is in the reports, to ready the site for development by securing permission for 3.5 million more square feet of employment space and acquiring third-party mineral rights to enable the site to be developed. So, since that jobs link was devised, significant progress has been made in the actual delivery of employment development in accordance with the main objective of that mechanism. It's also become clear in the last 2 to 3 years that an unhindered substantial pipeline of accessible housing is a key requirement of potential high-value occupiers who have expressed interest to ourselves and Business Doncaster in taking space on the adjacent EMPO 5 site. Directly related to that, and my second key point, is that this application seeks to resolve a fundamental issue set out at para 3.7 of the officer's update report, which says that if the housing required by such occupiers was to only be delivered on site in accordance with the jobs link, with applications not to be submitted until after the related jobs have been delivered, then the housing couldn't be provided until at best 3 to 4 years after the jobs which justified it have been created and taken up. That sequencing undermines the overall sustainability by limiting the availability of new housing available to the people who it's intended for, to give them the opportunity to live close to the workplace. So given the significant progress and continuing momentum with delivery of employment space, the clear views of potential major employers, that existing policy impediment, and the clear view of officers that better placemaking would result, this application proposes to decouple this scheme from that jobs link requirement. And this would also, as Mr Sewell identified, mitigate a real risk to delivery of the major infrastructure, physical and social, that's necessary to serve the site, including school places and the new town centre, which also undermines placemaking objectives. In respect to the town centre, we're in advanced discussions, thank you, with the development partner to bring forward a first phase, but potential retailers have understandably made it clear that their interest relies on certainty of more than 280 units coming forward on this key site. And similarly, as Mr Sewell identified from discussion with education officers, it will be now impossible for the authority to plan and procure delivery of the school places if there's no certainty about when more money may come post 280 units. All that said, as Mr Sewell has identified, we propose instead an obligation that no more than 600 units could be delivered until the access infrastructure into EMPO 5 has been provided. So take away the jobs link, increase the certainty and the confidence to retailers, education authorities, provide the houses at the right time. That's why we're proposing this application actually breaks that policy link. That will give a better outcome, houses when they're needed, and better placemaking. Thank you, Chair.
Right, I will now ask the committee members if they would like to ask any questions in relation to the submission. Councillor Dennis, Rob.
Thanks, Chair. Gareth, out of the two applications, which one would the developer choose to build on if this one was also approved?
The second application, no doubt.
Thank you.
Anyone else asking any questions? No. Do the officers wish to clarify any matters of fact prior to members going to debate?
No, thank you, Chair.
Committee, we will now go into debate. Does any member wish to comment on the report or ask a planning case officer a question? I'll ask a question if that's okay. We're approving or possibly approving this based on the fact that the airport doesn't open. It does open. What happens if it doesn't open? Can I just identify? We're talking about the M18 Junction 3 as being key to the airport, and it's also one of the things that Highways England actually said they would improve based on the airport being open. If it doesn't open, is Junction 3 still going to be improved, or will that become a problem?
I'll pick up on that one. Yeah, Junction 3 is already quite busy. So whether the airport's not open at the moment, so there will be still improvements required at Junction 3. What we plan to do with Junction 3 is obviously accommodate the traffic that would come from the airport as well, so that we can forward plan and prepare for the future.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Rob.
Thanks, Chair. Again, on the highways point, Steve, I can't recall, don't know if you can clarify, with the increased number of houses, is there an also increased contribution towards the Junction 3 improvements as well?
The impact that this development has on Junction 3 is the mechanism by which we calculate the contribution. So that's the same for any development going to Junction 3. So an increase in the amount of sort of houses will naturally generate additional traffic. It won't be significantly different, but it's, obviously you've got 200 extra houses.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
There is proportionately a higher contribution. I was just trying to get to the papers there, but yeah, it's based on trip generation with more vehicles and there's more trips. It's in the papers.
Is there a mover for the recommendation? Chris? Is there a seconder? Glenn? A move to the vote. Please indicate by raising your hand. 4. You on, Chris? Against? So the planning application has been approved. 25/00137/OUTA.
Chair, if I may as well, just before we move on to the next agenda item, I'd just like to sort of have on record, we deferred both these two applications to get more information on both the highways and education contributions. That additional information that was received was helpful, and it helped us to come to a more rounded decision now. And also in that interim period, whilst the applications were deferred, the council and developer managed to come to an agreement on a crossing point over a busy road, as well as safeguarding provision of land for a school as well. So I think it's worthwhile noting that the improvements to both applications due to committee deferring them in the last meeting.
Yeah, observations have been noted, and I know from being sat up here, we expected this to be, well, I've got a note here that after 3 hours we've got a time limit, and we're nowhere near 3 hours, so yeah, it just goes to show that good planning definitely does help. Yeah, go on, Roy.
I do thank Councillor Dennis for those observations, and I think just from our side as well, although there might have been not as much debate as last time, I think members, and it's just us reflecting if that's so, if I can take the liberty to do so, there's a lot of debate last time on the application, and obviously since then we've gone away and we've done a lot more work in order to give you the information that we needed in order for you to make your decisions today. So it's just kind of the perception out there that although there might not be much debate, we think that's probably because it's a job that's been well done. So thank you for your observations, Councillor.
Yeah, the comments being made up here that basically just goes to show if the information is available in the first place, we're not here just to make time up. We're here to ask questions that matter, and because these matter to everybody. Everybody behind that bench over there is all wants the best decision for Doncaster. We're not just making it half-heartedly. It's for everybody to get it right. But yeah, well done, Dennis, Rob Dennis. Yeah, if anybody wants to leave now, we'll have a 5-minute break. Item 6, appeal decisions. This report is for information only. Does any member wish to speak on this item? Can I ask that a committee member move that the report be noted?
It's noted, Chair.
Emma, do you want to speak?
I'm going to prolong this for you very briefly. Apologies. Just wanted to flag this appeal decision as being quite an interesting one, although it related to a prior approval, so slightly different process for us than a planning application. The inspector's commentary is quite interesting in this one around what amounts to a severe impact in highway terms, and what he says quite unequivocally is congestion and parking pressures in sustainable locations does not equal a harmful impact on highway safety. These are material considerations, obviously in circumstances that are similar insofar as the inspector's considerations were relevant, but it is important just to have that in mind, that very strong message that we're getting in terms of interpretation of that policy in the MPPF is that it's a really high threshold to get to in terms of severe impact, and looking for a parking space where there's on-street parking doesn't seem to be one that inspectors are agreeing with us on, unfortunately. So just to have that in your minds. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Emma. Item 7, Plan Enforcement Quarterly Report, September 2025. The report is for information only. Does any member wish to speak on this item?
Can we note it, please, Chair?
Sorry. Emma?
Sorry, I promise I'll let you go soon. Just one point on this, just to make you aware, at page 206 of your papers, we reported on the case of the land adjacent to Stainforth allotments. so that this was the case that went to court. The appeal on the planning application was dismissed, and they had a certain amount of time to comply with the court order and vacate the site. The time limit was up on the 15th of November, which was Saturday. We visited the site yesterday and they haven't complied, so we're taking legal advice on next steps with that one. We said in the papers we'd update you, and that's as far as that one's got, but unfortunately compliance hasn't been secured as yet, and we'll update you further.
Thank you, Emma. Can I ask that committee member move that the report be noted?
Sorry, Chair, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go on.
On the last page, 225, about developer signs, the little yellow signs noting a new development. This is something I've noticed as I drive around. There's development signs for years and years gone by. Is this exercise done yearly to then remove out-of-date signs?
This exercise predates me, so others in the room might know. Damien, do you know how often this this happens? Is it on a regular kind of rolling exercise?
Sorry, yeah, I don't have a definitive answer at this moment in time. I can find that out. Okay, sorry.
We can get that information across to you, but yeah, I would imagine there's a rolling programme of officers going out and checking that to make sure that they're complying.
That is exactly what happens. We can get you the detail, and I can say that definitively because I've been up ladders with screwdrivers, taking signs down and thoroughly enjoying it when they're unauthorised. So it is a periodic thing that takes place, and we make the offender aware of the offence as well, so we don't want them to commit it again. Yeah.
Damien? Thank you. Right. Right, so we've agreed that then, yeah? Maybe, members, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the business of today's meeting. I would like to thank everyone for their attendance and input. I now declare the meeting closed.